Hello, everybody, and welcome to the tip of the Ice-Burgh, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. I'm your host, Nick Belsky, joined as always by my co-host, Nick Horwat. And we have a great show for you guys today. But first, if you missed our little video yesterday, there are a couple of changes coming to Tip of the Ice-Burgh on YouTube. And first and foremost, that's what it is. Instead of Inside the Penguins, you can now find us on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcasts from by searching Tip of the Ice-Burgh. And also, new episodes will come out Tuesday and Thursday with a free. Everything's free. We don't have a paywall. Free live stream on Wednesdays at 4 p.m. But let's get into today's action because we have a loaded show for you guys. Within 2 weeks of the opening of NHL free agency, rumors are starting to pop left and right. We're going to start things off by taking a look at the goaltending trade market because there is a handful of names, according to Frank Saravalli, that could be on the move within the next couple of weeks, or if not, within the next couple of months as the NHL offseason starts to heat up. Also going to talk about a blockbuster trade piece that feels eerily familiar in my eyes. And we'll close things out talking about a couple of struggling forwards looking for a fresh start that the Pittsburgh Penguins have recently been linked to. But with that being said, let's get this started. And it started off with Frank Saravalli of Daily Faceoff releasing his trade targets list with 5. Count them, 5, Horwat. 5 time, as Booker T likes to say. 5 goaltenders appear on this list. You have Linus Ullmark as number 2 on the trade targets list. UC Saros of the Nashville Predators at number 6. Former Penguins prospect Philip Gustafsson at number 8. Jacob Markstrom of the Calgary Flames at 10. And Elvis Merzlikins at number 16. There's a good mix here of team and player being the one that wants a change. The question that I have for you, Horwat, is where does Tristan Jarry fit in this mix? Obviously, we've heard the reports that the Penguins are not actively shopping, but they are listening to offers on Tristan Jarry. If he's indeed on the trade market, where does he fit among these 5?
He'd probably fit behind all of them in terms of likeliness to move, the likelihood that he gets traded away. I think that's sort of what's held him off of these lists before, is that it's never really been certain if Kyle Dubas and the Penguins want to trade him, or even take it back to the Ron Hextall era. It's never been certain if they even wanted to deal him away. I could see him if he was a real consideration to be traded. He'd definitely be above Merzlikins just by skill. I don't know how much more you need from that one. He'd probably be below Saros, though. So within that 3 to 4 range of those quote-unquote top 5 goalies that could be moved this offseason. But again, just because there's so much uncertainty around the future of Jarry, it wouldn't shock me if he left. It wouldn't shock me if he stayed. I think that's what keeps him sort of out of this list, off of this list. But if it was certain that there was some word out there, he's being shopped, he's definitely moving, he'd be up above a couple of names here.
I think talent-wise, he's probably 4th on this list. I'd probably throw Ullmark, Saros, and Markstrom all above Tristan Jarry as far as just pure talent. But situation-wise, I'd put him directly behind Linus Ullmark because Ullmark is on the last year of his deal, $5 million salary cap hit, and it seems as if, they tried to trade him. Saravalli wrote it in this piece. They tried to trade him at the deadline to the Los Angeles Kings, and he nixed it with his no-trade clause. But at the same time, if they're wanting to move on from him and they have to sign Jeremy Swayman probably to a long-term deal this offseason, if they want to trade him, they're going to trade him. So, that mixed with the fact that he's a Vezina caliber guy, a guy that has had a Vezina trophy in the last couple of seasons, I think that puts him at number 1. But honestly, you have contract control with Tristan Jarry. The asking price might not be too steep depending on how eager the Penguins are to move on from Tristan Jarry. If they're trying to clear up the cap space, if they're trying to do a la Steelers quarterback situation, burn it down to the ground and start from scratch, they might not be asking too much for Tristan Jarry, and they might be asking for less than certainly the Nashville Predators are with UC Saros, and certainly what the Calgary Flames are asking for with Jacob Markstrom. So I would put him, as far as, where does he fit in this mix as far as, the most attractive options, skill matched with situation, I'd probably put him right behind Linus Ullmark.
Yeah, I could see that too. If it's skill for sure, in the situation. Again, it just depends on if they want to move him. We know Jarry has the skill. He's proven it before. It is what he's lacking in skill, at least now that he's becoming a more veteran player, getting closer to his prime. He's lacking that punch of clutch that punch. Sorry, that clutch punch. He's missing that being able to win in big games. I mean, he lost the net in the last 13 games of the season, including the meaningless game on Long Island. And there's an issue there. If the team doesn't believe you can do it in those situations, that's huge. The Penguins understand he's a good goalie. He can get you wins. He definitely didn't give you enough this year, and it's going to need to give you more if he sticks around. But you like to say he has, when it comes to the postseason success, he doesn't have it because he hasn't been given the chance. Well, he's got to get them there now. That's another part of it, is that he hasn't been able to get them there. Injuries plagued him in 22-23, and then Nedeljkovic stole it from him last year. So he has to get them there. He's got to earn that right to become a playoff performer, or else he'll just be a very good goalie that couldn't shine when the lights were the brightest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when I look at Tristan Jarry, it's not just this past season where he didn't do enough. He hasn't done enough for a couple of years now, right? The year prior, yes, he was dealing with that hip injury and missed 2 months of the season, came back late in the year. And well, everybody and their mother was saying, yeah, no, it's not injury related, his inconsistencies. You would kind of hope that it was, because if it wasn't, then it's alarming. It's more alarming if he was healthy playing the way he did down the stretch of the 22-23 season. But at the end of the day, you look at this situation, the Penguins have a lot of moves to make, and restructuring your goaltending room is going to be a tough thing to put on top of, figuring out what you're going to do at forward, seeing if you can make any changes on defense, adding to that, to being, trading away a goaltender and bringing in a number one goaltender. That's just a lot to do for Kyle Dubas in one offseason. And that's why I think you also see Jarry being left off a lot of these top trade targets lists, because they have been non-committal on whether or not they'd move him. I mean, we talked about Allmark potentially going to the Kings and the Kings being interested. The Kings would be an interesting name if they want Tristan Jarry. I mean, that could be potentially a landing spot. But at the end of the day, I think it all comes down to, how do the Penguins view Jarry going into the next season? Do they want to give him another shot? Because it seems like they're handing out second chances left and right now. And I feel like Jarry is going to end up on that list of players that get second chances.
And I don't hate that. I don't hate that as a situation, because he is good, and he probably he should want to prove himself to be that clutch goalie, to be a successful goalie. You get him in with that mindset of he needs to be better, he needs to really push himself, and maybe you have, depending on the backup, if it's Joel Blomqvist there, he has to push, or this young kid's going to take his spot. Or if you bring in the veteran backup, okay, I have to push, or I'm going to lose my job to someone on the back nine of their career. Or if you bring in a stud like they did with Alex Nedeljkovic last year, or at least who turned into a stud, okay, I need to push, or I'm just straight up going to lose my job because they have another really good goalie behind me. He should be getting pushed no matter the situation this year. And that's genuine. That should be good for him. The team believes in him. He believes in himself. And I think a lot of other people outside of the organization believe he can be a good goalie. He just has to finally hit that useful in the right moments part of his career, because he needs to get them there, and he just needs to prove it.
Now let's go into hypothetical land here. Say the Pittsburgh Penguins move on from Tristan Jarry by hook or by crook, however they do it. Tristan Jarry is out the door, and they are in the market for another number one goaltender. If the Penguins were looking for that number one goalie, of these five, who do you think is the best fit for the Pittsburgh Penguins?
Oh, those five. I've enjoyed the UC Saros name quite a lot. He's just provided a lot for the Predators, and he's got Vezina caliber skill, and he might be a little bit more affordable in terms of what these other guys can make. Jacob Markstrom could probably make a lot on the market if he rebounds and has a good year somewhere. Linus Ullmark, I mean, he won the Vezina a couple years ago. He can ride that still. I mean, won the Vezina with a lot of help from Swayman. He did win the Vezina, right? I'm not just kind of speaking into the ether.
He did. He won the Vezina, yeah.
Won the Vezina with a lot of help from Swayman, that's why I was confused by it whenever I said it. But he can ride that into a huge contract, and I just don't know if his skill and his prowess can last. Merzlikins just doesn't bring it to me, and down to just UC Saros being just a solid option, just a great face to fill into that role.
The problem I see with Saros, and Saravalli mentioned this in his piece, is the asking price is going to be astronomical from Barry Trotz because he doesn't have to trade UC Saros. He doesn't, because he does have Yaroslav Askarov, who had another stellar season at the American Hockey League. But at the same time, I mean, we saw these trade rumors about Saros last year. We're seeing him again this year. At what point does the boy who cries wolf actually see the wolf coming up to his stable, right? And at one point, does UC Saros actually become a player that is available? Because if he does, it's going to be expensive. So I think that rules him out in my eyes. But eventually he's going to be on the move. But I just think that, as of right now, the pressure, as Saravalli writes as well, the pressure is not on Trotz to move UC Saros because he is a bona fide number one, right? There is no question marks about UC Saros. But I think when looking at the rest of this list, you have a couple buy low candidates in Gustafsson and Merzlikins. The acquisition cost might still be a little higher because it's just what happens when you're trying to buy a younger goaltender like Gustafsson, like Merzlikins. Those guys have had some rough seasons on some questionable teams. I mean, Gustafsson's on a better team in Minnesota, but that's why I come back to Linus Ullmark. This is a guy that I've mentioned a couple of times this offseason already, that it really seems like the writing is on the wall for him to be on his way out of Boston. And if that's the case, what is the price going to be? Because everybody knows that you're trying to trade him. Everybody now knows that you had a trade in place at the NHL trade deadline for him. So that, to me, makes it seem like the Linus Ullmark trade price is going to go down. And the other question then becomes, what do you do on the back end of this? He has 1 year at $5 million. So even if it doesn't work out, you're buying yourself a little bit of wiggle room as to what the future of that position could be. Because what is Joel Blomqvist? We don't know. How far away is Sergei Murashev? We don't know. It gives you a year to try to figure some of the answers to these questions out. And I also think it does that in a way that shows you that you have a goaltender that at the very least can put things together to be one of, if not the best goaltenders in the regular season. The playoffs is a different animal. It's always a different animal, but the past two seasons, the Penguins haven't made it to the playoffs. So getting there in the first place, it's going to go a long way if you can bring in a goaltender of the caliber of Linus Ullmark.
Yeah, they'll need the caliber. They'll need someone who has that Vezina quality to them. That's why Linus Ullmark's a good choice. And you're right, the cost might go down a little bit because of previous trade options. But I think that's also what makes Saros, at least in my eyes, another great option. Like, sure, he's always been talked about when will he eventually actually get traded, if he ever does. But he brings that Vezina quality. He can steal you games, and he's not a big goalie, but he knows how to play the position pretty well. So I think that's sort of another big mark into his in his direction.
I was going to mention one of the two other goaltenders there, Gustafsson or Merzlikins. If you wanted to go in a different direction, if you wanted to say, hey, we have Jarry, we're going to bring in one of these guys that need a fresh start and let them battle it out as a true 1A, 1B kind of prove it type of player, a higher level of Alex Nedeljkovic, basically. But Merzlikins' contract is too much. Gustafsson's contract is too much. Merzlikins is making, I believe, over $5 million. Gustafsson's making 3.75. So unless you're getting a lot of retention, those options are out the window. So, I mean, to me, you're only pulling one of these five names off if you're moving out from Tristan Jarry. Saros is the peak answer. Like, that's the best goaltender on this list. It is the best going forward into the future. But I really feel situation-wise that you're going to spend less to acquire him, and also you're going to have a little bit more flexibility with what the future looks like with Linus Ullmark. So I think either of those two goaltenders would provide an upgrade over what you've gotten the past 5 years out of the goaltending position, to be completely honest. And I think that it's worth it if you look at what the Penguins need. I'm not going to go as far to say as, hey, look at the Stanley Cup final right now. Sergei Bobrovsky, $10 million. The art of paying a lot of money for a goaltender is back. It's not. But you need more than what you have had in the past 4 years, and you're going to have to pay a little bit for it. I don't think it's going to be $8, $9, $10 million, but I think you're going to have to pay an acquisition cost that's pretty high to get one of these guys. And I think that if you're the Penguins and the team you have constructed right now that is not great defensively, but hoping to be a little bit better, you're going to need a steady goaltender that has been able to be consistent throughout a season over the last couple of years. Tristan Jarry hasn't been that, whereas some of these other guys, Saros, Allmark, I'll throw Markstrom in there, but it seems like it's predetermined that he's going to New Jersey. But, those three have proven to be able to, at the very least, be consistent throughout a regular season, which would help the Penguins get back into a playoff spot. And from there, who knows?
Yeah, I think even Tristan Jarry, if he can come in and be a good option and succeed and turn his game around, even he could be a good option too.
We'll have to wait and see on that one. I don't know how much faith I have in Tristan Jarry turning it around. There's been too many different instances where he's fallen short for me to have complete and utter faith in Tristan Jarry going into the next season. But obviously, with 2 weeks to go until the opening of free agency, with the start of these rumors, we're going to hear a lot more going over the next handful of days. Let's move over and talk a little bit about another top trade target, this one being made available last week, or at the very least, the reports coming out that he's available last week. Patrik Laine could be available for trade, according to Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic. Here's what he had to say in his piece when talking about Laine. Quote, "My understanding is that the Columbus Blue Jackets intend to work with Patrik Laine's camp, led by agent Andy Scott of Octagon, to find the star winger a fresh start with a new team. Laine remains in the NHL and NHLPA player assistance program, having sought the help in January. He also recently had a minor shoulder cleanup procedure, but that's not expected to be an issue. The expectation is that he'll be ready to go for next season." Now, Horwat, you wrote a little piece on Laine's availability, and the one thing that I thought of right after reading your piece, right after reading what Pierre LeBrun had written, was this feels familiar. It's a little bit of deja vu for me, because Laine being available at this stage of his career, the player that he is, it feels similar to that of Phil Kessel back in 2015. If you look at the two's careers before Kessel was traded to Pittsburgh and where Laine is right now, Kessel was a top 5 draft pick. At that point, he had played through 2 organizations, Boston and Toronto. He was a 5-time 30-goal scorer, a 7-time 50-point scorer, and he was going into his age 28 season. If you look at Laine, first 2 things remain true. Top 5 draft pick from the Winnipeg Jets. Went through 2 organizations, Winnipeg and Columbus. He's a 3-time 30-goal scorer, even eclipsing the 40-goal mark once or twice, and a 6-time 50-point scorer. The only difference is, and the biggest difference here is, he's going into his age 26 season. So he's a little bit younger. He has that pedigree. It's not an apples to apples comparison. They're not the identical players, but right shot guys with a lot of scoring prowess. I feel like there's a lot of similarities in the 2 situations.
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of similarities. And, I think what makes the kind of difference too is Kessel was coming from the Boston Bruins, who, at least on the surface, looked like a well-structured organization, to the Leafs, who, again, aren't at least then, were probably a bit of a better run ship than they are now. This time around, Patrik Laine is coming from a disaster locker room in Winnipeg. Who knows what was going on back at that point, but we know since he's left, it's kind of continued to go downhill. The Stars want to leave, except for the fact that they signed 8-year deals. Who knows? And then to the Columbus Blue Jackets, who are notoriously one of the worst run organizations in the NHL right now. You give Laine the sort of push from a successful organization, both in the front office and on the ice. Maybe it wakes up that pedigree that he had in Winnipeg, the 30 to 40 goal scorer, the elite shot that he can bring that he just hasn't been able to bring in Columbus because of one reason or another. Mm-hmm. You stick a guy like Laine on Crosby's wing to finish off some of Crosby's playmaking ability. That's a phenomenal jump. It's as long as those two can work together and make magic. That's your Gensel replacement if you really needed it. Or let's say you have to put him on Malkin's wing. Well, Malkin is shown he's good at playing with young, skilled players. Patrik Laine fits that bill, even if he hasn't necessarily shown it over the last few years. He's an enigma of a player. It's really interesting to see kind of how his career has, you don't want to say, completely fallen short of expectations because he still has so much time left ahead of him. But he's also already proven he can do it. Those first few seasons with Winnipeg were outstanding. It's a matter of finding that game again. He helped to get them to the Western Conference Finals, I think, in Vegas's first year.
Yeah, back in 2018, that would have been.
Yeah.
They went to the Western Conference Final. And Laine, let's not get it twisted. When he came out, it was him and Austin Matthews, that these guys were going to be battling for Rocket Richards for years to come. Obviously, Austin Matthews has been able to maintain that and even more, almost scoring 70 goals this past season. But Laine has run into a couple injuries. And again, that's why I'm like, this is not an apples to apples comparison with Phil Kessel, because Kessel was the picture of, I don't want to say health, but he was the picture of availability, right? He did not miss games, whereas Laine has, obviously gone into the NHLPA player assistance program, but also has dealt with some injuries over the past couple of seasons that has affected his availabilities. But as LeBron said in that shouldn't be an issue. At least the shoulder shouldn't be an issue. And you would have to imagine that obviously we've seen players, most recently, who am I trying to think of? He didn't go into the player assistance program, actually, but Sam Poulin taking a step away from the game of hockey as well, coming back and having that love for the game again. You just hope that that's what you're getting out of Patrik Laine. Now, as far as the player and the money is concerned, 2 years at $8.7 million, that's your big swing if you're taking it. But here's the thing. And again, this harkens back to the similarities between the Laine situation now and the Phil Kessel situation in 2015. The Penguins have not had somebody to score the quote unquote easy goals since Kessel departed Pittsburgh. Somebody that can just come down, unleash his shot, and more often than not, it's going to be a high danger scoring chance no matter where he's shooting the puck from. They haven't had that type of scoring threat in a long, long time. The question then becomes, how much are you willing to pay for it? Because one move is not going to fix all the Penguins' problems. Going out and getting, Phil Kessel at that time was seen as, this is the piece that's going to change the trajectory of the organization. This is the piece that's going to get them back to being a cup contender this season. And lo and behold, they won 2 cups in the first 2 years. I don't think Laine is that piece for the Penguins, but I do see the similarities in needing that high upside, 40 goal potential sniper that is just going to become a easy goal scorer, quote unquote, somebody that is going to come in, and if you give him an iota of time, he's going to make the other team pay, and he's going to put it in the back of the net.
Yeah, and $8.7 million doesn't even strike you as an overpay, because it's pretty well known that the Jackets are trying to move him now. What does that mean? They're going to have to likely retain some of it. So you take that 8.7, maybe it's a 7. Maybe you're getting Laine for $7 million. Who knows how much they are willing to retain? Who knows what kind of trade happens here? Or if you take the full 8.7, maybe you find a way to get a problem contract off of your roster too. I mean, who knows where the Jackets are trying to go this upcoming season? Just fired their head coach yesterday.
Yeah.
So maybe they are in one more year of rebuild, or 2 more years of rebuild. Maybe they are trying to build something right now. If they're trying to build something right now, maybe they're okay with taking a Riley Smith in return, the veteran presence who can add to their depth, and maybe bang and crash a couple of goals where they need it. Whereas if they're committing to another year of a rebuild, maybe they take the Ryan Graves contract, some part retained, maybe go from there. Again, I'm spitballing. I truthfully know nothing of what the Jackets are trying to do or what they're trying to get in return for a guy like Laine. It's a disaster of an organization that needs to get its, train back on the tracks. And if it takes another just awful year, they may have to sit through it. But moving Laine seems to be that start of the commitment, and who knows what kind of package they're looking for. But those are just 2 names I'm throwing out because Pens fans keep wanting to see them traded. And Riley Smith seems pretty likely to be dealt.
Yeah, there's a chance Riley Smith is dealt before we finish recording this. Ryan Graves, on the other hand, I think there's a little bit of false hope for people that want to see him get traded. But again, we've talked about that ad nauseum. But I think that when you look at this situation, you're not getting Patrik Laine for cheap, especially if you want salary retained, because he has that extra year as well. Yeah. It might cost you a first-round pick. It might not, but if it doesn't, it's going to cost you a pretty solid prospect, of which the Penguins now have a couple. But at the same time, Kyle Dubas has mentioned time and time again, what does he want? He wants picks. He wants prospects. He wants young players that are getting close or at the NHL level. He's going to have to give up a couple of those if he wants to go get Patrik Laine, and not to mention the fact that this is a Laine that, while, yeah, the upside is very, very high. The upside is 40 goals, potentially, 70 to 80 points, maybe even more if he's playing on a line with Crosby. But it is a gamble, and it is going to be a costly gamble. And if it doesn't work out, it's something that does, I'm not going to say sets your organization back years, but it's something that does set your organization back if you bring in a player like that under that cap hit with the acquisition cost. So it's going to be interesting to see where he lands. I would think that he ends up getting traded, but at the same time, again, you mentioned it, Don Waddell is in there and he is changing things, hopefully for the better. I mean, that organization has been poorly run, like you mentioned, for a while. Waddell is, known now, has a track record of building a very consistent ship down in Carolina. Can he do that in Columbus? And is Laine part of that vision? I don't know. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But I do think there are some similarities between 2015 Kessel and 2024 Patrik Laine, especially if he ends up coming to the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think the fit would be very similar as well. Power play specialist, top six guy, pure sniper. The only thing that also is different as well, the only thing, I've said like three things, but the other difference as well is when Phil Kessel came to Pittsburgh, the one thing he showed off that you didn't really see as much in Toronto was his playmaking ability, was his facilitation of other players, was his assist numbers going up and up and up. I'm not sure Patrik Laine has that in his game, but again, he's played for the Jets, and the last couple of seasons he's played for an organization where, I forget Johnny Gaudreau was that good of a hockey player until I saw him at World Championships. That's what Columbus does, and that's what they've done the last couple of years. I hate to do that to him, but that's the stigma around the Columbus Blue Jackets. So we'll have to obviously monitor that situation. I wouldn't say it's likely for the Penguins. I would just say that there are some similarities. And of course, Kyle Dubas said last year when we were talking about the Erik Karlsson rumors, he said, if there's a player of that caliber, I would not be doing my job correctly if I didn't at least reach out. So, that tells me that he's at the very least going to reach out and see what the price is for Patrik Laine.
Let's move over. That call, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Here, guys. He's at least going to give that call, yeah. And I was going to tack on to the little bit of the playmaking ability. Who knows? Because in Winnipeg, he was there to be a goal scorer. That's what he was drafted for. That's what he was there for. And then we got nothing out of Columbus, like we mentioned. So maybe there is a playmaking ability there that we just don't know about, like we had with Phil Kessel. And also maybe that's just the team structure. If he was to come in and have that sort of prowess with the Penguins, does that add to it? Now we may continue. Sorry, there's a little lag in my phone now.
Let's move over and talk a little bit about a couple of forwards that, Horwat, you sent me this yesterday, were linked to the Pittsburgh Penguins. This is the season of trade rumors. This is the season of starting to get interest in certain free agents because we're under 2 weeks away from July 1st. According to the fourth period, there are a pair of struggling forwards looking for a fresh start that have been linked to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Let's start with the one that is coming from in the division, Oliver Wahlstrom of the New York Islanders. He is a restricted free agent this season, so it would be acquiring his rights to then potentially sign him. According to the fourth period, this is what they had to say about Oliver Wahlstrom. Quote, the Islanders are willing to move Wahlstrom, but it is unclear as to the manner in which they could trade him. Do they package him in a deal for an upgrade elsewhere or add him as a sweetener to take on a bigger contract? The first part of that tells me, Riley Smith. Second part of that is not pertaining to the Pittsburgh Penguins. So when you look at Oliver Wahlstrom, only 67 games played in the last two seasons, lost most of his 2022-23 due to a knee injury. And because of that, he got off to a slow start this past season, and he just couldn't hold down a lineup spot. Even when it was, Lambert first and then Patrick Waugh, he just could not stay in the lineup. What do you think about the Penguins being connected to a guy like Oliver Wahlstrom?
I like it. He fits that Mike Sullivan type of, he's not going to score you a bunch of goals. He's going to be a bottom six defensive option. The way I think I said it on here before, people don't want to, discuss it and don't want to recognize it, but the way Mike Sullivan coaches his bottom six is a lot like the Islanders, period. It's that defensive mindset. It is that grinding you down. You're not going to score a bunch, but you're going to, shut everyone else down. And that's what Oliver Wahlstrom could bring to a Penguins bottom six. It's that sort of matching styles between the Islanders as a whole and the Penguins bottom six just in general.
Yeah, here's the thing that I don't like about that. I feel like he's had to adjust to that because of the teams that he's been handed over the last couple of years. There hasn't been a lot of offensive talent in the bottom six. And even last year, Kyle Dubas outwardly said, bottom six is for defense, right? We're hoping they score, but the bottom six is for defense. So that's going to lean into how Mike Sullivan is deploying these guys. But if you go back to 2016 and 2017, when he had bottom sixes that were more inclined to at least scoring more, Phil Kessel was in the bottom six. Who else am I trying to think of? Carl Hagelin was in the bottom six. These guys are defensively responsible, but he was coaching them to be able to have four scoring lines, four lines that could always be dangerous when on the ice. Matt Cullen was able to be kind of that best of both worlds situation. Wahlstrom's offensive numbers haven't quite been there, but he is a big body. He is somebody that I feel like if the Penguins acquired, he's going to be put in a very similar situation to what he was in New York. Now, that might include more opportunity, right? Because as we've seen with Jansen Harkins last season, if you're good defensively and if you play the way that Mike Sullivan wants you to play, even if you're not scoring offensively, you have a chance to play every single night. Wahlstrom comes over to the Penguins in a year where they're hoping a lot of young guys take that step. I think this is exactly what I've mentioned a couple of times on the show is they want insurance in case those guys aren't ready. Wahlstrom is insurance in case those guys aren't ready. He's only 24 years old, so maybe that change of pace, change of scenery just reinvigorates somebody like that. I mean, he was a former first-round pick, but also this is a guy that has never played a game at the American Hockey League level. So I think that's where you see him being connected to the Penguins is if the Penguins don't have guys that are ready, then Wahlstrom will get in the lineup. If they are ready, I see Wahlstrom being a 13th forward. And that's where, you know, it's interesting because if the Penguins can kind of kill two birds with one stone, bring in another piece to compete in the bottom six while also getting rid of a Riley Smith who may fit better in New York than he did in Pittsburgh. But again, all of his connections on the fourth period are West Coast and South. If you can kill two birds with one stone, I don't hate it. But at the same time, I think there are better options to bring in as competition, especially if you end up having to trade something other than, you know, all our bad players for all your good players, which as we know, just doesn't happen very often. So I don't hate the fact that they were tied to him. I see where the tie is. I see what the role would be, but I don't know if I like Oliver Wahlstrom as a name for the Pittsburgh Penguins going into next season. I think there are better names and better situations that you could bring in to compete with some of these young guys in the bottom six.
Does it feel like he would kind of be an Oliver Bemstrom 2.0?
Emil, yeah.
Emil Bemstrom 2.0, yeah. It just bringing him in, he's going to do this specific thing for you. And if he gets taken out of the lineup for someone else, of course he is. He wasn't supposed to bring a bunch of quality to the lineup. Just as you were speaking there, that's kind of the comparison that clicked in my head. It's just the Emil Bemstrom with a whole year to work with rather than a deadline acquisition. And in fairness to Wahlstrom, I think he would be a better option than Bemstrom. I think he'd be they're both 24 upcoming RFAs. So there are pieces that there are those similarities, but that's just the easy comparison to make for people to understand.
The one thing that people will like about Oliver Wahlstrom, he's big. He's 6'2", I think 211 or something like that was the last time he was measured in. Big body for the bottom six. A lot of people want that. So if you want that, maybe Wahlstrom's a name that shoots up your list a little bit more than it's up mine. Let's talk about the other name that was rumored to be, linked to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that is Andrew Mangiapane of the Calgary Flames. He has 1 year left on his current deal at $5.8 million. This is what the fourth period had to say about his current situation. With 1 more year left on his contract, teams are calling the Flames about Mangiapane and whether they can pry him out of Calgary. His goal production has dipped after scoring 35 in 2021-22, but teams still believe at his age, he is capable of putting up 25 plus goals. That age is 28 years old. Like I mentioned, 1 year left at $5.8 million. Penguins have had a lot of these $5 million wingers not work out. I mean, Rickard Rakell is on kind of slippery surfaces right now. Where is he going to go with 4 years left on that contract? Riley Smith brought in with a $5 million deal did not work out at all. What do you think about Andrew Mangiapane of the Calgary Flames?
I like this one a lot more. He's a definite, obvious top six choice. He's going to fill in on the wings next to Crosby or Malkin. He's going to fill that little goal scoring hole left open by Jake Gensel. For what it's worth, that's a name you're going to hear a lot from Penguins people this summer, and not because they're targeting him, but because they're trying to still fill what he left.
Mm-hmm.
Without doubt, Mangiapane gives more of that than anyone else that they might be linked to this summer. He's got that 25 goal ability. He's pushed past it before, and he's a name that I feel like he's kind of always floated around Pittsburgh, just sort of in small bits, just little like if he's available, that's someone the Penguins should go after. He's not the over the top superstar, but definitely has a skill that the Penguins could use. And right now it's goal scoring from anywhere in the lineup. And he provides that. He could provide that. Does he need a bounce back? Maybe a little bit. And much like Laine, give him a good organization to play in. I mean, Calgary's been okay, but last couple years have kind of been a bit of a tumultuous time.
Mm-hmm.
Get him out of that situation. Get him into one in Pittsburgh where they're trying to close out these years of Crosby, Malkin, Letang as best as they can, and he could be a big piece of it. That's one thing that you have to look at with anyone the Penguins bring in is what situation are they coming from? Like Laine, coming from a bad organization. Like Mangiapane, if either of those guys coming from one organization to the other, it's a boost.
Mm-hmm. Now, I have a glass half full outlook on this, and I have a glass half empty outlook on this. The glass half full is, he had that great season in 2021-22, 35 goals, 55 points. And since then, as the fourth period mentions, he has taken a dip in point production and goal production. That coincides with the team dropping off of a cliff, like you had alluded to there, right? That is coinciding with the Matthew Tkachuk deal, where they brought in Jonathan Huberdeau. They brought in, I'm trying to remember who else they brought in that one, Mackenzie Weegar. But the team has not been the same since that deal was made. And that could affect Andrew Mangiapane's bottom line, right? That affects what he was able to do on the score sheet because of the team around him. Still, not like Jonathan Huberdeau or Nazem Kadri or Jokes by any mean, but the team as a whole just has been in a little bit of dysfunction since those moves were made 2 years ago. That, acquiring him could change that, right? That's the glass half full. The glass half empty is the Penguins aren't in that much better of a situation than the Calgary Flames. Both teams missed the playoffs. Both teams are clearly a shell of what they were at their best. If you bring them over, it could reinvent something. It could reinvigorate something, especially, playing with Sidney Crosby. Jonathan Huberdeau is a great player, but Crosby is that different level, right? But at the same time, as an organization, as a team, the Penguins are a step down from what they have been the last 2 decades. And I think a lot of people struggle with that fact, and to realize that fact that, you bring him into the Penguins, it's going to be fixed because he's with the Penguins. And that held true for a long time. But right now, you don't know if that's going to work. I mean, right? It didn't work with Riley Smith. He came from Vegas. That's a winning organization. You would think a winning organization in Pittsburgh, it's going to work. It didn't. In fact, it failed miserably. I see some revisionists going out there saying, well, it wasn't that bad towards it failed miserably as you drop your phone. But all good. But I think that's my glass half empty look at this is if you bring him over to Pittsburgh, could it potentially just be a similar situation to Calgary where he's not going to get to that 25 plus goal scorer because the situation is also still not as great in Pittsburgh as it used to be.
Yeah, and there are also plenty of examples that you could come up with where it has also failed through the 20s. I think of Derek Brassard right away. There's, and I can't think of any more. But
Jason Zucker, for the most part, until that last season, I mean, injuries played a big part of that. But Jason Zucker, for a first-round pick, you got one great year, and the other, 2.5 were kind of okay. It's not great.
He had COVID screw up when he first got here, when he was playing really well.
Yeah.
And then injuries. I mean, yeah, he wasn't producing when he was on the ice, but injuries screwed up a lot of things as well. But you're right. Yeah, that's another one that until that last season, it didn't look like it was going to reach its full potential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll have to keep our eye on these two. Obviously, any other names that get tied to Pittsburgh or linked to Pittsburgh, we'll discuss on this show. But as of right now, the two that are brought up, and really the first two that have been brought up, is people that are linked to the Pittsburgh Penguins, not linked to being traded from the Pittsburgh Penguins. But Oliver Wahlstrom of the New York Islanders, Andrew Mangiapane of the Calgary Flames. Let us know in the comment section what you think of those two players. Let's close this thing off with a little quick update on a news piece that came out over the weekend. The Penguins have been selected for Kraft Hockeyville once again. This will be the third time that they're participating in the Kraft Hockeyville game. They'll go up to Elliott Lake, Ontario to take on the Ottawa Senators. The two previous times they played in Kraft Hockeyville were in the United States, Johnstown, Pennsylvania, in the first ever United States edition of Kraft Hockeyville. Then a couple years later, Belle Vernon, PA won it. They ended up playing the game at UPMC Lemieux Complex, but third time the Penguins are participating in Kraft Hockeyville. What are your thoughts on this preseason matchup with the Ottawa Senators?
It's a lot of fun. It's cool that the NHL does this. They send these NHLers into these local rinks. It was cool seeing them at the War Memorial in Johnstown. They were supposed to play at Ross Draver in Belle Vernon, like you mentioned. I forget why they couldn't.
I don't think they were able to get the updates done in time to host two NHL teams and that many fans.
Yeah, so they held it at UPMC Complex. Still, if it's worth anything, Cranberry is also a good little hockey area, Cranberry, PA, for the amount of youth teams that do play in that specific facility. There's still good connections there, and I mean, Western PA is really turned into a pretty good spot for this sort of situation, this sort of growth of the game from the youth perspective, from kids on up. And, it's not surprising to see that and they do it in Canada. I believe Canada and America, I believe they do the one of each. It's cool that the Penguins are going to be a part of it again. And this time north of the border, getting Sidney Crosby, that if he participates in this one, getting Sidney Crosby, that sort of boost in that fun sort of atmosphere up in Canada again, where he is still so beloved.
Yeah, when I think of the first one, first of all, obviously meant a lot to me being from Johnstown, but second of all, when I think of the first one, it was Penguins versus Tampa Bay Lightning in Kraft Hockeyville. That was the coming out party of Sergei Plotnikov, when we all thought he was going to be a massive piece to that team back in, I think, 2014 or 2015. I can't remember the exact. It was 2015 because we were in college. So late 2015, as they were getting ready for that season, we thought Sergei Plotnikov was going to be a big piece to a Stanley Cup winning team. Well, they won the cup that year. He just wasn't part of it. But, I digress on that point. Always great for fans are these Kraft Hockeyville games. And honestly, the NHL doing a lot more of this for preseason games is great anyway, because preseason games, as you know, they're fine. Right? There's not a lot of people in the building. There's not a lot of energy. Teams are trying to figure out what some of these players are going to be. They're trying to parcel out their last couple of positions, send them to a new place, entice the players that are the Sidney Crosbys, the Evgeny Malkins, the Brady Tkachuk's to want to play in these games and get these opportunities. And I think that's what, playing a lot more of these games. We saw the Nova Scotia Showdown last year between the same two teams. I think that's what a lot of these games do. And I think that adds a little intrigue to what is otherwise a pretty dry preseason slate. But obviously, congratulations to Elliott Lake, Ontario, being named Kraft Hockeyville, and I'm excited to see that game coming down later this fall. But that is going to do it for this episode of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and remember, you can find us on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcast from by simply searching Tip of the Ice-Burgh. We'll see you guys next time.